Hello and welcome to the intermediate training class for billing and payments. In this session, we will be looking at how to set the financing options on a policy when it is being issued to determine if it is being paid in full by the customer, financed through the carrier, or financed through a third-party financing company, and how all of this will affect the billing entries that Catalyst will create at the time the policy is issued. We will take a look at how to post payments with or without a bill in the system, how to create a bill when necessary, how to generate an invoice or a receipt, and we will also take an in-depth look at how the billing tab under the customer or policy functions. When on a customer screen or when viewing an active policy in the system directly, you will see a tab for billing information. Along the dark gray toolbar at the top of the screen, you will also see a drop-down for bill pay options. If the contact you are viewing is still a prospect and not yet a customer, these bill pay options will be grayed out until we change their status to a customer. When we are on a policy screen directly, if that policy is still in a pending status, it has not yet been issued in the system, not only would the bill pay options from the toolbar be grayed out, but you will also not see a billing tab yet on the policy screen until it is moved from a pending to an active policy by issuing the policy under the policy action option. Once you have selected to issue the policy, if you do have any quote information that you've previously entered under this pending policy in the quotes tab, then we would not have to re-enter the carrier and premium information. We can just select it here by checking the box. If we had not entered a quote previously, the system would take us through a quick workflow process where we'll indicate the carrier, the premium, and any carrier fees at that time. We do cover the issuing policy workflow in more detail in the Clients and Policies Overview training. Today's class we're going to focus specifically on the financing options when issuing this policy. And you'll see we have three options here. We can indicate if the policy is paid in full by the customer, financed through the carrier, or financed through a third-party financing company. Depending on the financing option I choose might also affect the billing type. If we indicate this is paid in full, I can say this is either direct bill or agency bill. If it is direct bill, the client is going to be paying their premium direct to the carrier, and we would be waiting to collect our commission at a later date. If it is agency bill, we would be taking the down payment into the agency and collecting our commission up front before forwarding the remainder of that premium onto the carrier. If I do select agency bill, then my premium sent is automatically set to net, meaning that I'm collecting my commission up front and sending the net amount of premium to the carrier. If we indicate it is direct bill, we can set premium sent to either gross or monthly, depending on how we typically collect that commission. If it's in one lump sum installment at a later date in time, or if we collect it monthly as the premium is earned. If the policy is not going to be paid in full by the customer, but is going to be financed, you have the option to select that we are financing it through the carrier, or it's being financed through a third-party finance company. If we indicate this is financed through the carrier, billing type will default to direct bill, and we can indicate if premium sent is gross or monthly, depending on how we collect our commission. If we indicate it is being financed through a third-party finance company, you will be able to select the specific finance company from the drop-down list in the middle. This is a list of all the finance company contacts you have created in the system, so if you do not see a company listed, you may need to create them as a new contact from the bottom toolbar. We cover the setup of the finance company contacts in the beginning portion of this class. Depending on how the finance company contact was set up, when you select a company, a default down payment finance option would be selected here, but we can change these as needed, depending on whether we need to use a direct bill or an agency bill option. The agency bill option would have our premium sent default to net, while a direct bill option would give us the ability to set this to gross or monthly. For this first example here, let's set our financing option to paid in full, and we'll enter this in as an agency billed policy. Our premium sent is going to be set to net, so we would be collecting our commission up front once we record that we've received the down payment. Catalyst will take you through a quick workflow while you're issuing this policy. We can select any agency fees, The down payment, since we indicated was paid in full and agency billed, it's already filled in. And then we can enter the amounts of our commission. Any commission rules that you have entered would pre-fill here as well. We do cover setting up commission rules in more detail in our class on Commission Central. Let's go ahead and click Finish to issue this policy. When you issue a policy, if there's any money to be collected from the customer at this time, we can either select to print an invoice to take a payment, or we can return to the policy if we're going to take either of those actions at a later time. Now that we're back on the policy, it's no longer in a pending status. It is listed as active, and we'll now see that we have a tab for billing information specific to this policy. When we click on the billing tab, we're going to see the billing information displayed that's specific to the current policy that we're viewing. If I wanted to go back to the customer level, we could click on their name here. The customer also has a billing tab, and under the customer's billing tab, we would see all bills associated to all policies. We can see the policy number listed here. We would also see any bills that were created and associated only to the customer contact. So if the bill is not in regards to any policy premium, but is charging for something like an agency fee that we're collecting, we would find that billing information listed here under the Customer's Overview billing tab. When viewing the policy screen directly, we will only see bills associated to that specific policy. Your billing information is also going to be filtered by the date range or by the account type. So I can tell the system to show me all bills in the last 30 days, 60, 90 days, or from all time period. Or I can ask the system to show me only the billing information associated to the customer, to carrier commission, to carrier premium, to producer commission, or to finance company premium that is due or owed. Now, since we indicated that this policy was agency bill and that it was paid in full, we can see under the customer account that we're waiting to collect the down payment from the customer, and it's for the full amount of the premium. Now, when we had activated the policy by issuing it, the system did prompt me if I wanted to take a payment or print an invoice, and I had skipped those steps to return to the policy so I could show you where you could print an invoice or take a payment from the policy screen directly as well. When we're viewing the billing tab, I do have the option to print an invoice directly from the associated bill. There's a link right here. You also have that option under the Bill Pay. From the drop-down menu at the top toolbar, I can select to print an invoice. We will go through a short workflow for creating this invoice. You'll see here the bill that the system had created automatically for the down payment once we issued the policy, and I can put a check mark next to that bill. If I needed to create the invoice for a bill that has not been entered into the system yet, I could create the new bill and have the invoice created at the same time. I can click Next to go to the next step in the workflow. And here for the bill information, we're going to indicate who we are sending this invoice to. The customer is selected by default, but if I needed to send this to an additional interest, I can select from my list of certificate holder or lien holders in the system. I could also put Other, and I could type in the full name and to the attention of address for whoever this bill needs to be created for. Any notes that you would want to have appear on the printed invoice, we could indicate here, and then we could click Finish for the system to generate the invoice. So the invoice has been generated. I can click here to view the printed invoice right now. A copy of this invoice is automatically created and put into the Files tab under the customer or policy it's related to. So if I do click OK without viewing the printed invoice, I can always access it at a later time. Let's go ahead and click to view. So our invoice is going to open up in a separate window, so you'll want to make sure you have your pop-up blockers allowing pop-ups from QQ Catalyst. We'll see the agency information and the customer information here, information on the policy and the bill, and any of the notes that we had wanted to include would be displayed down here as well. I can choose to save or print a copy of this invoice, and I can close this window when I no longer need it. We can then click OK still to return to the policy. And note that it redirects us to the Files tab, and as I mentioned, a copy of that invoice is automatically attached to the customer and policy. So if I need to bring up a copy of this again, we can do so. Now, once the invoice has been sent out and the customer is ready to make a payment, we can take a payment by going up to the Bill Pay option in the toolbar at the top and selecting the Take a Payment option from the menu. Again, Catalyst will take us through a quick workflow where we can select the bill that we're taking the payment against, and I can click Next. If there's any agency fees to charge with this bill, we can click here to add as many fees as we need. The list of agency fees is set up in your global preferences by your system administrator. And the last step in the workflow is the payment details. We can see the down payment amount that we're collecting, any additional fees that we're charging and collecting at this time, and then the total amount here listed below. I can indicate the payment method. If it was a check, we could indicate the check number, so you'll see the notes field change. If we are directly uploading the premium payment to the carrier's website, I can check the direct upload box. This is going to split out any agency fees, allowing me to collect those as a different payment method. So if the premium was paid in check and the $10 agency fee was paid in cash, we can split those payments out. And I can click Finish. Again, you can include any notes that will appear on the receipt, so the system will generate you a receipt once you have recorded the payment. So again, I can click here to view the printed receipt, which will open up in a separate window, and when I'm done I can click OK to return to the policy. So this would be a copy of our receipt. We can see our agency fee separated from the policy premium here, and the payment details will show that we took those in two different payment methods. Again, I can print a copy or save a copy, and I can close this window when I'm done and click OK to return to the policy. Just like when we generated the invoice, a copy of the receipt is automatically created and saved under the Files tab for the specific customer and policy. So I can always get another copy of that here. Also, just like with the invoice, if we look at the billing tab, we'll now see the amounts that we've received from the customer listed under the customer's account, and you'll notice the balance up at the top right is now at 0. What I wanted to point out here is that you can also access the receipt for payments that you've received directly from the billing tab, just like we were able to generate an invoice directly from the bill that it's associated to. If we take a look at our carrier commission account under the billing tab, we'll see the amount of commission that we were waiting to receive has been reconciled as received. Because this was an agency billed account, we didn't have to do any reconciliation. We were keeping our commission up front once we collected the down payment of the premium. So if we take a look next at the carrier premium category, we can see the amount of premium that is waiting to be sent out to the carrier, and notice that it is the total amount less our commission, so we're just sending the remainder, or the net amount of premium, as we had indicated when we set up the policy as agency bill. Now when we are ready to indicate that we have forwarded this premium amount on to the carrier, we can actually click right on the link here that has the carrier's name or the MGA or broker listed if there is one applied on this policy. We can see the balance amount that's owed, and I can click on the link to connect to the reconciliation page for this carrier for premium that needs to be sent. We will cover the reconciliation of premium sent in the advanced portion of this training class. If you remember previously when we had looked at the account for producer commission in our system, there were no billing entries that were created. If we look at that account now, we'll see the two producers that we have listed on this policy and the amounts of commission that are currently due to them. The reason these entries were not in the system previously is because we had not yet reconciled the agency's portion of commission. In Catalyst, you will not see any amounts due to your producers until you have collected commission for the agency. So looking at our carrier commission, we can see that we've received and reconciled the full amount of commission. So we would now show under our producer commission that the full amount that is owed to these producers is waiting to be reconciled as well. Once we've paid these producers, we can reconcile the commission has been paid in the same way that we would be able to reconcile the premium that was sent to the carrier. I can click right on the link here next to the amount that's due for this particular producer to jump to that producer's reconciliation page. There is the ability to reconcile as well from inside Commission Central. We'll go over the reconciliation of commissions in more detail in our commission class. Next, let's take a look at setting up the policy with a direct bill paid in full financing option. Now for the first policy that we had set up as agency bill, we did have a quote entered into the system when we went to issue that policy. For this one here, I do not have any quote information entered. I'm going to go ahead and issue the policy without a quote so you can see the difference in the workflow process. Now, when we issued the policy with a quote already in the system, we had already specified the writing carrier, policy premium, and any carrier fees on the quote, so we didn't need to re-enter that information again. Because I didn't have a quote entered this time, I would select now my writing carrier, and in the next step I would indicate my policy premium and carrier fees as well, and then we would go through the other steps in the workflow, just taking a look at agency fees, down payment information, and then the policy commissions and agency producer commissions. Let's take a look at our financing option. This one here we wanted to set up as paid in full, direct bill, and I'm going to set the premium sent to gross, and we'll click next. So after entering our policy premium, carrier fees, and any agency fees, we're taking a look at our down payment option. And again, we indicated this was being paid in full by the customer, but because we indicated it as direct bill, they would typically be making that payment direct to the carrier. However, if that payment is going to be collected first in the agency and then forwarded to the carrier, still collecting our commission at a later date and time, we would check the box here, premium down due to agency. That way Catalyst will create the corresponding bill that the premium is due to the agency, and once we collect it, it would create the corresponding bill that the full amount is to be forwarded to the carrier. If I need to edit this down payment option at a later time, you can do so. So again, the system will prompt us to either print an invoice or take a payment if there's any money to be collected at this time, or of course we can return to the policy if we're taking those actions at a later time. So we set this up as direct bill, paid in full, and we indicated the premium down was due first to the agency. So if we look at the billing tab, the customer's account, we can see the down payment that's due from our customer, and it's our full amount of premium, carrier fees, and agency fees. Now if we needed to edit that down payment option, if it turns out that the customer is paying the carrier directly, they're not bringing that money into the agency, we do have the option under the bill pay option from the toolbar to edit the down payment. This will take us back to the steps in the workflow dealing with the agency fees if we need to adjust these at all, and then the down payment option. So again, I can uncheck the box if the premium is being sent directly to the carrier, and I would check the box if the premium is going to be taken in first by the agency and then forwarded to the carrier. We would still be collecting our commission at a later date and time. I'm going to uncheck that box so I can toggle it from what it was, and we'll click Finish. Now we're still being prompted to print an invoice or take a payment because there was agency fees here to be collected. So instead of seeing the full amount of premium to collect with the agency fees, we should now just see the agency fees due from the customer when we return to the policy. So back under the billing tab, we can see the customer. They are now looking to collect just the agency fee, and it's part of the down payment due from the customer. So now it's just $15 that we're waiting to collect here. If we look at the carrier commission, we can see the amount of commission that we're waiting to reconcile from the carrier. And when we receive the commission reconciliation statement along with that commission payment, we can click on the carrier's link here in order to jump to their reconciliation for the commission that we've received. And again, we will be covering reconciliation of commission in more detail in our commissions training class. Just like the policy we were looking at before, if we take a look at our producer commission, we're not going to see that there are any billing entries because we have not yet reconciled that our commission was received from the carrier. Once we reconcile, maybe even just a partial amount has been received, we would see the partial amount also due to the producer. So it will track the amount owed to the producer as we are tracking the amount earned by the agency. Let's take a look at one last example for financing options. This time we will set up one that is financed through a third-party financing company. So now we're back in the issuing policy workflow. Notice that I have selected my writing carrier. I've also selected an MGA or broker that was tied to my writing carrier in the system. So this policy is going through the MGA. Our financing option, if we do select this as carrier financed, it is going to work much like the direct bill policy that we had looked at previously. The payment is going to be made to the carrier. It's going to be on a payment plan, and then our commission we're going to be either collecting in one lump sum installment at a later time or monthly as the premium is sent in to the carrier. For this example, let's look at a third-party financed option. We can select our finance company from the list, and the default option for that finance company will pre-fill. If we needed to adjust that default option, we can do so, and we'll click Next to go through the remaining steps in the workflow process. When we are using a third-party financing company, you'll notice that the down payment option, the premium down, we have the ability to enter the down payment amount here. So let's say our customer's paying $200 down. And after clicking Finish, we're back on the active policy, now active in the system. We'll take a look at the Billing tab. We'll see the down payment that we're waiting to collect from the customer. We'll see that no amount of commission is entered yet. We did set this up as agency bills, so we'll reconcile our commission received once we take in that down payment. We can see the amount of premium that should be sent out to the carrier, and in this case it's going out to the MGA or broker. So notice the link for the reconciliation now has the MGA or broker listed and not the writing carrier, since this is going to be the billed contact. And if we look at the finance company premium, we can see the amount of policy premium due from our finance company. Once we've reconciled that this has been received, we can go ahead and forward it on with the down payment that we received from the customer, and we should reconcile the amount of our agency's commission at the time that we are receiving this down payment from the customer. The last thing that we're going to want to look at in the intermediate portion of today's class is how to take a payment when there is no bill created. So you do have the option to take a payment, and if there are no bills on this contact, we don't need to exit out to create a bill. We can just click Next in the workflow, enter in any amount of fees that we are taking at this time, taking a payment against, and then the billing description we can select. So we can say this is for policy premium maybe, the amount that's due at this time, and the amount that's currently being paid at this time. So we're actually creating the due amount with the bill for policy premium, and we're recording the amount that we're receiving against that bill all at once. So I don't need to go back and create the bill. We're just taking the payment and the bill's being created in the background. A copy of the receipt is created as always. We can click OK. A copy of that receipt will be in the Files tab. Here's the receipt that we had just generated. And if we look at the Billing tab, we'll see the amount that we had received and the bill that was created in the background for the full $200 amount. So there's still a $50 balance outstanding from the customer that we'll be waiting to receive. Now you can only take a payment without a bill when you're on a specific policy. If I am on the customer directly and I go to take a payment, if I don't select one of the bills here and I try and click Next, the system will notify me that I do need to have a bill created. If it's not one of the bills here that I want to take a payment against, I can click right here to create a new bill at this time. We can indicate if it's for a particular policy, or we can click Skip to keep this bill associated just to the customer. We can indicate if this is money due to the agency or money due from the agency we're creating a bill for. Agency fees is all we would be able to charge on this bill since it's not associated to a particular policy. It's only associated to the customer contact. Any default amounts can pre-fill if they're set up in the location preferences. And then our bill details, we can include the due date, and we can see the amounts listed here, and we can click Finish to create that bill. So if I wanted to go back and take a payment again against the bill that I just created, I can do so. Let's return to the contact. If I'm on the contact or policy directly, you also have the ability to create a bill from the bill pay option. I could say create a bill, and it would take us back through the same workflow process we just looked at. If at any point you see that your customer has a negative balance, you can issue a refund to the customer from the bill pay options. Again, I would select the bill, and the next step would be the payment details. We can say that we're paying this back in cash, and any notes that we would need to have printed on the receipt. We can click Finish. And we can click here to view the printed receipt. And we can see that this is a refund receipt to the customer. A copy of this should automatically be saved in Catalyst as well under the Files tab. And here's a copy of that receipt. Now that is going to cover everything that we wanted to get into in the intermediate portion of the billing and payment class. Remember, if you would like to review a recorded version of today's session, or if you want to register for any of the other live weekly webinars that we conduct free to groups of registrants, you can hover over your username in the top right corner of the screen and go over to the support training option on the menu to find links to both the recorded versions of our classes and the registration page for the live weekly webinars.